Back in the 80s, if it hadn't been for games like the Ultimas, the Wizardries, the Sierra text parsing series, and the first Zelda, you could have almost defined video games as a form of entertainment in which a character runs left to right, killing things and sorting out obstacles. Most of the most important IPs at the time were exactly just that. Mario, Mega Man, Metroid, Castlevania, Contra, Ninja Gaiden, etc, etc, etc. After the Atari era from the late 70s and early 80s, when the 8-bit Nintendo and the 8-bit Sega systems became the new hot thing, video games as a form of entertainment became an almost unequivocal mathematical identity with side-scrolling platformers. Thankfully, we had games like the aforementioned Ultima, Wizardry, and King's Quest series, amongst many others, to keep the hopeful idea alive that video games didn't all need to be side-scrolling platformers. And thank God for that, because I sucked at them. Really badly. During the 90s, things opened up considerably. We saw the popularization of first-person shooters like Wolfenstein, Doom, and Quake, one-on-one fighting games like Street Fighter II, Mortal Kombat, and Killer Instinct, JRPGs like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy, more elaborate puzzle games like Myst and The Seventh Guest, and the most famous text parsing series became point-and-click adventure games. We already had plenty of alternatives to the good old side-scrolling formula, but by the end of the decade, games like Fallout, Baldur's Gate, Diablo, and Planescape Torment made an appearance. And that's when I finally vowed never to touch a side-scrolling platform again. I really didn't vow anything, I just got tired of the genre. In the back of my head, I guess I thought, the only thing that would make me pick up one of these ever again is if they made them into an RPG, which became my absolute favorite video game genre around that time. Or out of pure nostalgia, if they make a throwback game of one of my childhood favorites many, many years from now. Or if they make one that absolutely breaks the world of gaming.
Fuck.
So I dusted off my gamepad, did a little bit of stretching, and jumped right into it. So it seems like 2025 was the year in which video game developers for some reason decided to pay tribute to arguably the most popular ninja games from the late 80s and early 90s. I'm talking about Ninja Gaiden and Shinobi. I know that many of you old farts were already playing video games around that time, back when the two major consoles were the Nintendo and the Sega Entertainment Systems. And if you were more a Nintendo guy, you are probably more familiar with Ninja Gaiden, and if you were a Sega guy, then Shinobi is probably more your thing. And if your parents had deep pockets, or if you had access to an arcade, you might have played both of those series. Well, it's the year 2025, and now you have Ninja Gaiden Ragebound and Shinobi The Art of Vengeance to choose from. But these aren't the 80s. Now you have a job, bills to pay, a family to look after, and maker knows what other responsibilities. Also, at some point you probably moved on to a genre like, I don't know, let me take a wild guess here, RPGs? And so the time to indulge in your favorite hobby is precious scarce, and the portion of that time that you are willing to dedicate to a side-scrolling platformer that seeks to pay tribute to a vague childhood memory is probably not that great. So my guess would be that in the best case scenario, many of you are going to play one or the other, or maybe wishlist both of them to never really buy them, or buy both, and just let them sit in your libraries collecting digital dust for ages to come, but who am I to judge? If you were a Nintendo/Ninja Gaiden guy, or a Sega/Shinobi guy, you probably don't need me to tell you which one to get. But if you were a fan of both of these IPs, or if you are moderately curious about which one you are going to like more, or if you don't know jack shit about any of these ninja games for boomers, but you want to pick up a solid ninja game with classic console vibes in 2025, but don't feel like getting both of them, then you came to the right place today, because I am here to help you answer the most important question about these games. Which one is better for me? Well, I know which one I liked the most, but I am going to try to do my best to help you draw your own conclusions. This one is more like one of those Death Battles videos, so in this corner, wearing a fabulous blue ninja suit, we have Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, developed by the Game Kitchen, the same guys who gave us Blasphemous, and published by Dotemu. And in this other corner, wearing the latest Scream in ninja fashion, the latest Scream in 1993 that is, Shinobi The Art of Vengeance, developed by Lizardcube, the same guys who gave us Streets of Rage 4 and published by Sega. Round 1. Character Control. I don't know if I've been out of the side-scrolling scene for too long, but I think both of these games have incredibly snappy controls. Sword slashes, jumps, dashes, dodge rolls, climbing, special attacks, all of it feels super responsive and satisfying in both Ninja Gaiden Ragebound and Shinobi The Art of Vengeance. In Ninja Gaiden,
it's all in the reflexes.
It's more about reacting to enemy attacks and getting through platforming challenges. Timing that sword slash and bouncing off that enemy attack with precision is paramount. Enemies die in one or two sword slashes, but many of them give you very little time to react or figure out what their deal is, so you must stay sharp at all times. And when an elite enemy comes on, you better snatch that power attack to one-shot them immediately. Or you're gonna have to pull off some crazy ninja moves to dispose of it and not get hit by other attacks. Shinobi The Art of Vengeance, on the other hand, is more about figuring out how to kill enemies and overcome platforming sections. In this game, you actually engage enemies in combat. You have more time to react, but you also have to figure out how to counterplay their attacks and moves. To that end, you have a super broad arsenal of moves and attacks at your disposal. You have various sword attacks, kunai throws, knee thrusts, power strikes, different airborne attacks, and all manners of combos. I'm usually the kind of guy who tries to figure out a formula that works for him and then repeats the damn thing until it no longer works. But Shinobi The Art of Vengeance is designed in a way that makes it easy for you to incorporate new moves to your repertoire and see the obvious benefit of using every attack for the situation for which it's most useful. Some people have said that combat in Ninja Gaiden Ragebound forces you into rigid attack patterns. Well, that's not strictly true, and you can get away with killing enemies in different ways. The game does point you in a certain direction, so to speak. In Shinobi The Art of Vengeance, you can come up with your own game plan, one that suits your particular playstyle. There are attacks that are obviously more efficient to counterplay certain enemy moves and to undo certain advantages, but there are always plenty of alternatives. I felt really good about mastering all of Shinobi's combos and techniques. I don't think I've used an array of skills as broad as this one so regularly in a game that has real-time combat, and it's definitely not me who should be given the credit, but the game for making it all so seamless and satisfying to do. Shinobi The Art of Vengeance also features a few Metroidvania elements. Over the course of the game, you unlock new skills, and these skills are not only needed to progress further in the game, but they can also be used to go back to locations that you have already been to access secret areas and acquire extra juicy loot. These special skills are also super easy and super satisfying to use. Both games have special attacks and screen clearing nukes, and they work in a similar way. In Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, you have kunais, and you can equip an additional attack or secret art on Kumori. But you can equip only one. You can have scythes or grenades, for example, but not both. And you can also choose one of several Ragebound attacks, which are like super special moves that have their own meter. The kunai barrage deals massive damage to all enemies, and it makes you immune while you are casting it, while the healing fountain creates a sphere around you that regenerates health. But as it happens with Kumori's secret arts, you can only equip one. In Shinobi The Art of Vengeance, you have finishing techniques, Ninpo arts, which are special attacks, and ninjutsu skills, which can only be used when its meter is blinking. But you can map these arts and skills to different buttons in your controller. You can use Ninpo arts by simply pressing the left back button and the button to which you have mapped the skill. And the ninjutsu technique can be used by pressing both the left and right back buttons and the button to which you have mapped the skill. You can use all of these techniques if your meter is full enough. They aren't mutually exclusive as they are in Ninja Gaiden. You also have super satisfying execute moves that you can pull when an enemy gets this little fatality icon over his head by simply pressing the left and right forward buttons on your controller. Both of these games feel really good to play, and they both do a really good job of recreating the OG experience. but I like that you have many more moves at your disposal in Shinobi The Art of Vengeance, and the fact that you end up using most of them to build your own little combat tactics. I also like the many ninja techniques that you use to sort out the game's various obstacles. You don't have anything like that in Ninja Gaiden. So to me, this round goes to Shinobi The Art of Vengeance. Round 2, Level Design and Gameplay. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound and Shinobi are similar in many respects, but they are definitely not the same. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound is 100% meant to be a throwback to the original Ninja Gaiden trilogy with a few gameplay tweaks. You run from left to right, you kill things with 1 or 2 sword slashes, you sort out platforming sections and incoming threats, and very occasionally there's a non-mandatory area that you can explore and some resources that you can collect to purchase upgrades at the shop. There are a few vehicle sections, you play as 2 different characters and there are a few character-specific levels, and there are a few cinematic transitions to get you excited about what's coming next. It's meant to be fast, furious, and arcadey, so the level design is not too elaborate, but it is what it needs to be to keep the gameplay varied and fresh. Platforming sections are not excruciatingly difficult, but they require precision, and they are often combined with very inconvenient flying and jumping enemies to make your life miserable. Enemy design is simple, but it is varied enough. You are constantly getting new, faster, and tougher enemies who are also progressively more difficult to figure out. If it weren't for the Kumori mandatory timed sections, the pace of the game would be perfect. But these sections require extreme precision, crazy sharp reaction time, and many need to be done absolutely perfectly if you don't want to find yourself at the very beginning of the section. Several dozen times. They do feel good to overcome, but in my book, they should have been integrated into the side-scrolling design of the game better, and they should have definitely not been timed. Shinobi The Art of Vengeance, on the other hand, builds upon the Shinobi IP, but aside from those classic Shinobi 3 riding and surfing sections that this game pays tribute to, quite phenomenally I might add, it's not trying to bring back Shinobi 3 for the Sega Genesis as it was. The game is significantly slower than Ninja Gaiden. You are expected to engage in combat with enemies, disrupt their attacks, stun lock them with combos, and often even figure out their collaborative offensive and defensive tactics. Platforming is more elaborate, and it requires you to combine many of the ninja techniques that you unlock along the way to get through. Levels can get quite labyrinthian, and it's not always obvious what you have to do or where you have to go. Each level has a map, and you can use it to fast travel between the level's various save points. And there are many areas and secrets that you can only access if you have unlocked one or more of the ninja techniques in the game. In addition to regular combat encounters and platforming sections, there are Elite Guard encounters in which you have to defeat progressively harder waves of enemies. Aku Rifts, which are particularly difficult combat or platforming sections that are thankfully non-mandatory, and straight-out puzzle-solving challenges. Shinobi is more about figuring out what to do, where to go, and how to kill enemies in the most efficient way, while Ninja Gaiden is more a test to your thumb-eye coordination skills. Both games have mandatory platforming sections that require millimetric precision. In both cases, some of these challenges are punished with instant death, and you have to go back all the way to the very beginning of the section. And I absolutely hated those, but I was mentally prepared to get these sections in these games. It's Ninja Gaiden and Shinobi after all, what did you expect? Both games let you go back and play missions that you have already completed, and the reasons why the game expects you to go back and replay a mission are telling of the type of game they are. In Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, you get a little report card, like you did in school, with a grade, and your grade depends on how well you did on the test. Each mission has 3 different challenges, and all of them are a test to your skills. Don't get hit by X type of damage, kill the boss in one try, never fall into a pit, etc. So the main reason to go back and replay a level is to get a higher rank and complete some of the challenges that you couldn't complete the first time around. You can also go back to collect some of the scarabs you missed, but that's rarely going to be the case because they are easy to find and collect. Shinobi The Art of Vengeance, on the other hand, shows you a percentage of completion next to each mission. It wants you to go back and find and complete those Elite Guard encounters. It wants you to use those ninja techniques that you have learned to access the secret areas and collect 100% of the loot. And it wants you to complete every Aku Rift. Ninja Gaiden wants you to get good and go back there and do it perfectly this time. Though, once you finish the story mode in Shinobi, you unlock the arcade mode, so if you want to revisit some of the areas you've already beaten to get your schoolboy report card Ninja Gaiden style, you can also do that in Shinobi. You also unlock the boss rush mode, which is more interesting in my book. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound also felt like it needed a couple more areas. Shinobi The Art of Vengeance, on the other hand, had perfect running time. It doesn't leave you wanting more, and it doesn't outstay its welcome. Of course, your mileage may vary, but in my book, Shinobi's gameplay design is just more elaborate and interesting. And the fact that figuring out seems to be the main pillar upon which this game is built is a big plus for me, because I love games that are about figuring out. So this round goes to Shinobi The Art of Vengeance. Round 3, Boss Fight. I think both Ninja Gaiden Ragebound and Shinobi The Art of Vengeance have decent boss fights. If you are looking for a game in which each boss has 5 or 6 different attack moves that change when they have 75 or 50% health and require you to get good to beat them, then these are not the games for you. I think bosses have a fair array of moves, a reasonable health pool, and they give you a fair chance to react to their attacks and win the fight during your first attempt. Ninja Gaiden has harder bosses though, and getting the timing right can be a little bit trickier. I couldn't defeat a single boss in my first try, and in some cases it took me quite a few attempts. There are a couple of cool boss fights in Shinobi that are super fun, but I felt like most of them were a little bit on the easy side. I managed to defeat most of them on my first try, and I'm not even good at this type of game, at all. I felt better about my ninja skills when I defeated a boss in Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, simply because boss fights were more demanding. This was a close one, but in my opinion, this round goes to Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. Round 4. Does it pay proper tribute to the OG IP? This is a close one, and a very tricky one. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound feels like an updated version of the OG Ninja Gaiden games. It is glorious to see that some of the timing that I mastered 36 years ago with my sword attacks still apply in this game. So for that, Ninja Gaiden gets a big fat plus. Some of the old enemies are back, upgraded, and updated, and that definitely deserves another plus. Some levels are definitely a shout out to the classic games, so for that it gets another plus. The art style is also meant to be a throwback to the OG trilogy, and I think it does a competent job, so it gets another plus for that. The style of narration is also quite faithful to the original, and it includes many of the trilogy's classic themes, even if it misses out on some others. Cinematic cutscenes also feel like a modern-day version of the groundbreaking cutscenes in the original games. So for this, it gets a big fat plus. But then the game is chock-a-block with member berries. Shamelessly so, in fact. Some of them are appreciated, like that little music snippet at the beginning of each act. But there are some member berries that don't add anything of value to the game. The CIA defector who helped Kenji says that she was sent by Sea Swallow, which was Irene Liu's codename in the original Ninja Gaiden. This is shameless name dropping that is exclusively there for you to say, "Oh man, Sea Swallow, that was from the OG game." There is also the reenactment of Joe Hayabusa's duel from the opening scene in the original game. This is Ninja Gaiden Ragebound's way to make a statement right off the bat. I hereby declare that this game is exclusively for you old fuckers who played the original game. And, well, yeah, thank you. I won't deny it was extremely exciting to watch this, but it really doesn't add anything to the story in the game. Also, you don't play as Ryu, which in my book is a ginormous, big, fat minus. You also don't get to use any of the OG skills. Ninja Gaiden's Ninpo techniques were the best thing about the OG games. I was expecting a 2025 version of these skills. Big fat minus there. And I was kinda hoping to see at least one of the bad guys from the OG trilogy. We could have had Clancy from the first game instead of this chick, since she has similar powers. In my book, that's a minus. Shinobi the Art of Vengeance is also a worthy entry to the Shinobi IP. It mostly draws inspiration from Shinobi 3 for the Sega Genesis. It gets a big fat plus for bringing back some of the most iconic levels from that game as they were, namely the surf level. It gets a ginormous big fat plus for that. You play as Joe Musashi, which is the protagonist of the series. This was an absolute no-brainer of a choice, but Ninja Gaiden didn't get the memo apparently. They also nailed the look of the character and the feel of many of its techniques, and for that it gets a plus. It brings back the classic ninjutsu techniques of fire, lightning, etc., and it ramps up their badassery through the roof. And there's nothing like playing a game 36 years later and using the same skills you had back in the day massively upgraded. For this it gets a massive plus. You also get to fight some of the old bosses, and some of them even talk about the first time you fought them. So for that, it gets a big fat plus. The music feels a bit too much like its own thing. There's nothing in Shinobi the Art of Vengeance that reminds me of the OG games. It's like whoever composed the music didn't care about the old game. The music per se is not bad, but it doesn't even try to bring back the good old vibes. So Shinobi gets a minus for this. The gameplay in Shinobi the Art of Vengeance has been changed quite a bit compared to the OG games, and I can see a lot of people giving it a big fat minus for this. Getting lost in labyrinthian level layouts, backtracking to open doors to access hidden areas, even if there's a map that makes this easy, going back to levels that you have already completed to do this, that, or the other thing that you couldn't do the first time around because you hadn't learned the required skills. Some fans of the old games may not be thrilled with this. I count myself lucky because most of the changes that Shinobi the Art of Vengeance brought to the table are things that I always like to see in my games. So in my book, this round goes to Shinobi the Art of Vengeance. Round 5, the story. Admittedly, this is not what you play these games for, but the original Ninja Gaiden was jaw-dropping because it was one of the first, if not the first action game in which cutscenes were used to advance the story. But in these games, you don't want the story to get in the way of the gameplay. The story in both games is simple and goofy, and it doesn't add much to the game. The story in Ninja Gaiden was a bit more interesting, a bit more elaborate, and it featured cutscenes. And somehow, it was less intrusive than the story in Shinobi the Art of Vengeance. In both games, you get brief interruptions with dialogue snippets, but in Ninja Gaiden these happen at the beginning and before a boss fight. In Shinobi the Art of Vengeance, this sometimes happens halfway through a level, and I found that moderately annoying. Fortunately, this doesn't happen too frequently. The story in Ninja Gaiden is a tad more interesting and less invasive, so this round goes to Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. Round 6, Secondary Mechanics. So what else do you do in these games? Well, there's a shop where you can buy passive upgrades and new combat techniques that you can equip on your characters. In order to purchase these upgrades, you need to collect currency. Ninja Gaiden uses scarabs, and there are usually 3 of them that you can find in every mission. Shinobi's system is a bit more elaborate. You find Ouroboros relics that you can use to unlock upgrades, but you need to have enough coins to be able to purchase them. Collecting scarabs in Ninja Gaiden is super easy. Most of them are on the main path, and you only need to put a little bit of extra effort to reach them. Some others require you to go out of your way to a non-mandatory room, but it's not even in the same galaxy as some of the Indiana Jones shit you have to do in Shinobi to access some of the secret areas and loot. In Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, you can access Muramasa's shop when you are in the world map, but there are only a couple of missions in which you can purchase upgrades from within the mission. In Shinobi, it's a little bit different. You run into several shops throughout the game's various levels, but you can't purchase upgrades while you are in the world map. In Ninja Gaiden, you have talismans, secret arts, and Ragebound arts that you can equip. In Shinobi, you have amulets, Ninpo skills, and ninjutsu skills, but you can't equip more than 1 skill of each. You also have the Dark Katana, which you can't equip in place of your Oborosuki family blade, though you must complete every Aku Rift to unlock it first though. There is an additional something in Ninja Gaiden that I absolutely loved though, and it's the fact that you make a final decision, and there is something that happens as a consequence of that. Very simple and yet very, very original and refreshing. It brought a smile to my face even. And this thing that happens in the end is enough for me to give this round to Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, though it was very, very close. Round 7, Music. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound starts firing on all cylinders right out of the gate with a slightly modernized, slightly sadder version of the opening track from the original game, which then transitions into wholesale, video game appropriate metal badassery. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound soundtrack rocks. It's a throwback OST in style and composition, but it has all the power and thickness of modern day sound. If the OG Ninja Gaiden trilogy had come out in the 2020s and not in the late 80s and early 90s, this would have absolutely been the perfect soundtrack for the game. And that's exactly what I want from a throwback game. Shinobi's soundtrack has some pretty kick-ass tracks too. The standout pieces in Shinobi the Art of Vengeance are actually better than anything in Ninja Gaiden's Ragebound soundtrack in my opinion. But the soundtrack in Ninja Gaiden is just consistently good all the way through, which is unfortunately not the case with Shinobi's OST in my opinion. Also, the music in Shinobi does not remind me of the OG games in any way, And that's a minus in my book, even if Shinobi isn't trying to be a throwback game like Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. In my opinion, this round goes to Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. Round 8. Sound. The sound in both of these games is both satisfying and frustrating at the same time. Some sounds have that proper oof or fuck yeah quality to them, but there are many more things that are just completely silent. I know there's a lot going on simultaneously in these games and they don't necessarily sound hollow, but I played Mandragora Whispers of the Witch Tree earlier this year, and I felt like the sound in that game was way more robust, better produced, and better mixed with other components like the music. Shinobi's sonic landscape seems to be a little bit more robust, but that's because the levels are a little bit more elaborate. So I guess this round goes to Shinobi The Art of Vengeance, but not by much. Round 9. Graphics. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound is a pretty decent throwback game, and this includes its presentation. However, I can't help but to compare it to other games published by Dotemu like Streets of Rage 4 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. And those games are vibrant, exciting, they are chock-a-block with details, and they ooze personality. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound looks good for sure, but it's not in the same level as these other titles in my opinion. Enemies look pretty cool, and some of those mid-section animations are exciting and badass, I'll give it that. Aesthetically, Shinobi The Art of Vengeance is not trying to emulate the graphics from a game that was released 32 years ago. Damn, that's still the new Shinobi in my mind. Shinobi The Art of Vengeance looks like a modern-day side-scroller platformer, and it looks great. You can tell that a lot of work went into the art design of this title. Joe Musashi has elaborate animations for each attack, move, and combo. Ninjutsu moves are eye-popping, and finishing off an enemy with an execution move is oh so satisfying. There is an enormous variety of locations that look different from each other, but they all feel like a part of the same world, and they are elaborate and detailed. The user interface is also very lore consistent and immersive. It doesn't feel like a layer that's been plastered over the game for you to interact with, and I can always appreciate this. This is a game with a very strong artistic vision. In my book, this round goes to Shinobi The Art of Vengeance. Round 10. Performance and Stability. These games run like a chunk of cheap margarine sliding down a hot new frying pan. Loading screens are quick. I didn't experience any noticeable FPS drops, bugs, or glitches with any of them, so I don't think this is a deciding factor. This round is a draw. Round 11. Price value. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound goes for $11.24 in my region, and Shinobi The Art of Vengeance goes for $24.99. I think that in both cases you get your money's worth, but Ninja Gaiden Ragebound feels a little bit more like a steal of a deal. And if you are going to pick one of these two games as a palate cleanser before you commit to a much lengthier game, then Ninja Gaiden Ragebound might be a slightly better choice. So this round goes to Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. But here are a few more things that might be useful to you to make a decision. First, Ninja Gaiden Ragebound has touch damage, and I know a lot of people hate this and think it's a dated design choice, but I didn't really mind too much. It was a part of the OG Ninja Gaiden experience after all. Second, Ninja Gaiden's difficulty increases substantially past the first half of the game. It is overall much more difficult than Shinobi, and that's why save points feel further apart. Third, Shinobi has a heck of a lot more platforming sections, just so you know. Well, it looks like it's a draw, and I'm actually a bit surprised with the outcome of my own video, because I personally consider Shinobi to be the superior game, maybe because it did the things I care about the most a lot better. Overall, the game is more elaborate, more immersive, longer, and it has better production values. If I had to choose only one, I would choose Shinobi The Art of Vengeance. But hopefully I provided enough useful information for you to decide which one you want to get, or if you want to get both or none. I'm actually curious about your final decision, so let me know in the comment section. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, thank you for watching all the way up until now. If you like what you are seeing on this channel, please consider subscribing and clicking that notification bell to avoid the usual YouTube shenanigans. Come check us out on Discord if you don't mind all the boomer talk that goes on there. I personally love it and wouldn't change it for anything. And share the video if you thought it was cool. Bye everyone.
You're excused. You can go back to playing video games.